my name is Sarah Pӧtter, and I will give this EDU-ARCTIC lecture today about plastic in the Arctic and the alarming consequences for the wildlife. In this lecture, there are actually two terms I'm going to use. Those are also in Polarpedia now. It's the term of the Gulf Stream and the term microplastic, and I will explain both of the terms to you during this lecture. So let's start. You all probably agree with me that the Arctic is a beautiful piece of nature that we have on Earth, and it's a complex system with many issues going on at the same time. And the Arctic is seen as a unique ecosystem with a unique value, as for example for fishing, shipping, and the oil and gas industry, which you also might have heard of. But at the very same time, it's probably the ecosystem that is under most pressure and threat, since it's affected by climate change and also ice caps melting, and of course sea level rise. And if this already isn't enough, there's an extra pressure on animals in the Arctic, like plastic litter and other pollution, which has alarming consequences. So during my presentation, I will try to explain to you where the plastic comes from, what microplastic actually is, how that plastic litter ends up in the Arctic, because if we throw something, let's say in Europe, how does it end up in the Arctic? Also, I will answer the question what effect plastic has on wildlife and the effect on humans. And I want to give you some tips in the end how you can easily reduce your own amount of plastic and make sure that it doesn't end up in the ocean. So first, to give you an impression about how serious the situation of plastic in our oceans really is, I want to show you a very short video clip from the movie A Plastic Ocean. So this is the trailer I was talking about. It's really, really short, and I just want you to pay really close attention to it.
What do you think it's from? From a ship, I could see plastic everywhere.
Yeah, this one was really short, but I think it was really effective. And with those pictures in our mind, we will go back to the presentation and have a look at that picture, because this one is, I mean, it's close to us. It's part of the Arctic. This one's a picture from the northern part of Norway, and what you can see is actually a beach full of plastic. Since it's a bit hard to interact with the classes, I took a short look on this picture and just wrote down the first things I saw, so which would be fishing nets, plastic boxes, plastic bags, fishing buoy, a pipe, a can, plastic bottles, and many more stuff that does not belong on a beach. But that's actually just the plastic that we can identify by seeing on the picture. And it's actually just one aspect, because there is so many more plastic that is so small that we can't even see it properly. And because you can't see it, you can't identify it. And I don't know if you can see that, what I have on my finger here. Oh, you see that? It's really small. Actually, it's a sesame seed. And what the point of this little small sesame seed is, I will explain that to you in the next one, because it has the same size as microplastic. And microplastic, that's the word that I outlined before. It's one of the words that is now in Polarpedia. And so microplastic can be found actually in every size, shape, and color, but only those that are less than 5 millimeters in length. So approximately the size of a sesame seed. Here again it is, are called microplastics. And microplastics can come from a variety of sources and are extremely harmful to our oceans and its aquatic life. And during this lecture, I will explain to you why it is like that. And on this picture, you already saw a lot of plastic, but how much plastic is there in the oceans? Do we know that? Do we actually have a clue how much there is? Actually, it's a really difficult question to answer. I know, not just only for you, only for me, and for all of the researchers worldwide, because nobody knows. It's like nobody can give you a certain or like a definite amount of plastic that you will find in our oceans. But let's just have a closer look on the data that we already have. So I found this one. It might maybe look a bit complicated to you, but it's actually really, really easy to understand. It's a global map about the amount. Here it's like in grams per square kilometers of the plastic floating on the surface, on the ocean surface. And if you have a look to your right, there's a scale, and this scale has a dark blue color in the bottom and a dark red color on the top, and for showing the concentration or how much there is. So meaning that the dark blue dots is a very low concentration of plastic, and the dark red spots show high concentration of plastic. And the areas marked in gray, that are actually the countries. So if we would look to the upper left part at 60 degrees north, that would be Norway, or we can see parts of Norway, and then it goes all the way up to the Arctic, but even not all of the Arctic is displayed in this picture. So what we see immediately is the areas covered in red, the so-called ocean garbage patches. You can see highly polluted areas, especially on the coast of the US, the Mediterranean Sea, and off the coast of Southeast Asia. And then you actually see something in the Arctic, but not very much. So, but it's just colored in green and a bit in blue. But why is that like that? Does it mean there is no plastic in the Arctic? Because then I don't need to give this lecture. But that's not true. I mean, at this time, researchers didn't have enough data, so it seems that everything is all right in the Arctic, but it really isn't, that we know. So we have a lot of plastic or microplastic floating in the ocean, and in 2014, it ranges from 15 to 51 trillion particles of small plastic pieces that had a size between 0.3 millimeters, so approximately 2 pieces of sesame seeds, and up to 20 centimeters, which is already a really big piece of plastic. And they weighed between 93 and 236,000 metric tons, and everything that is just floating around in our ocean. So probably. That was in 2014 when this study came out, and that also meant we have 2017 now, which I just assumed that it might be so much more plastic right now. But in order to make it a bit more understandable, I thought of comparing that tremendous amount of 93,000 tons of plastic floating around in our ocean with something else. So I compared it actually with a blue whale. So one blue whale, we know that a blue whale has a weight of 200 tons. And so 93,000 tons of plastic would be, well, many blue whales in number 465 blue whales. Just try to imagine so many blue whales. That's like impossible, but it's also impossible to imagine 93,000 tons of plastic in our ocean. So, but then it's still the question, where does all the plastic in the Arctic come from? Well, there are different sources. It might be food wrappers, plastic bottles, straws, plastic cups and plates, plastic bags, of course, and bottle caps. And actually, I could go on listing all of the sources or all, different sources where those litter comes from, but then this lecture would be finished. But all of this plastic actually that we throw ends up in the ocean by either rain and winds that sweep away plastic trash into nearby waters, but also that like eventually get into rivers and drains, and then it will be carried directly into the ocean. So one thing we actually can be pretty sure about, that is our very own plastic that ends up in the ocean. But how does it end up in the Arctic if somebody would throw a plastic in the ocean? So let's say in the US, and this actually leads us to our second term for the polarpedia, and it's the term of the Gulf Stream. You might have heard about the Gulf Stream before, because the Gulf Stream is one of the strongest ocean currents that we have, and it's a warm current that originates from the Gulf of Mexico. You can see the pillow down there. It's written Gulf Stream, and it's at the coast of Mexico and the United States. And it flows actually along there up to Canada. It's close to Newfoundland. And then it goes over into the Atlantic drift, what we call that. And actually, this one carries all the warm water from the Gulf of Mexico further to Northern Europe. And this is also what it makes, or what makes it warmer in Northern Europe, especially in Scandinavian countries and Britain and Ireland, than it would be without the influx of the Gulf Stream. But that also, it's not just nice that we have a warmer climate by the Gulf Stream, but it's also plastic is transported from the North Atlantic to the Arctic by the Gulf Stream. So the huge ocean current also carries water from the Gulf of Mexico, carries plastic. And once it gets to the Arctic Ocean, this current sinks and travels back to the equator, but all the plastic that it once brought will just stay there. The plastic does not sink immediately. It would just float around in the Arctic waters and harm our environment. So as you already saw, there are immense amounts of plastic in our oceans, and most of them, or a lot of them, are also transported up north. So not long time ago, researchers published a report actually about plastic in the Arctic. And this team of researchers went on an expedition with a boat called Tara. You can see that to your left. It's a sailing boat. And what they did was basically that they took that net down, and then they towed it behind the ship. And every now and then they would take up the net, flush it out, and have a look what they found. You can see that net that they towed to your right-hand side. And then they really counted carefully the pieces of plastic that they found in the net. I mean, that's not an easy task because there are lots of other biological material in there. Let's think of plankton, jellyfishes, and so on and so forth. So it's really hard to separate those materials, but they managed. And this is actually what they got. Plastic fragments is what they found. And those plastic fragments, they appear in different sizes, shapes, everything that you can ever imagine. And they also had it into 4 different categories. You can see them here. It's okay. I'm sorry. Now you can see it better. Perfect. So the microplastic is actually divided in 4 different types. This would be to your left-hand side, the granulates and pellets. And then you have rigid fragments, which could be basically anything. I mean, it could be, let's say, a plastic bottle, a bottle caps, and then you have the films, which is basically from plastic bags, and you have fishing lines. So that doesn't seem so good if we find all those things in the Arctic, but apparently they are good and bad news about those findings. So the good news would be actually that there are still areas in the Arctic where there's no plastic, and those are the dark blue dots on the map that you can see around the pole. So yes, there are still plastic-free areas in the Arctic Ocean, or not especially, but they are like the Alaskan part, the Canadian part, and off the coast of Greenland. But as I said before, there are also like really bad news or worrying news, and those are the red dots. You can see them close to Svalbard, or also called Spitsbergen, on Novaya Zemlya. And those areas contain some very high amounts of plastic. So the data showed that there is a high amount of plastic in the Arctic Ocean, and also microplastic that is already trapped in sea ice and ice caps. But actually, this research only shows plastic on the surface. So just think about all the plastic garbage that must be already on the ocean seafloor that we don't even see. And that amount of plastic on the surface just drifts further into the Arctic and will finally, with the help of ocean currents, end up there. Like here. And all of us know that it doesn't belong in the mouth of a polar bear. So I actually found an interesting website for you guys. I think you also think it's interesting, but I think so because it's this one. It's called plastadrift.org. I will go to this website later together with you and show it to you. And actually, it's a team of researchers that did experiments on tracking plastic fragments over several years of time to find out the journey of the pieces of plastic. And this one is more like a detective work because you can actually see all the way where it traveled. But still, it's just a tool to see or to detect the floating pieces of plastic and not the ones that already sunk on the seafloor or even that are laying on beaches. So I will just end the screen and then we will go to the website. Last Adrift, it's called .org. And here you can see I placed this yellow duck over here. That's like the coast of Newfoundland. And then you can, to the top right, you can see the years. So that would be after 7 years right now. After 9 years. So they tracked it really, really carefully. And you can actually put the duck wherever you want to see where it goes. I just randomly placed it somewhere. But it's really nice to see how the streams interconnect and how plastic moves. So yeah. So, well, we are going back to the presentation. So, but I also need to add one thing, and that's actually all of the amounts of plastic from the Gulf of Mexico. They're not all of the plastic pieces that make it into the Arctic. But anyways, that's not a good thing either because it will still float around in our oceans and harm sea life and other animals. And there's a connection about the Gulf of Mexico and what ends up in the Arctic, as you learned before, that's for sure. So we find plastic in the Arctic nearly everywhere now, both on the surface, the deep sea, frozen into the ice, and the sea life. It's just, there are alarming consequences. And which leads me actually to my next topic, and which is maybe also a bit more interesting for you guys. It's the effect on wildlife in the Arctic. So plastic is a big problem for wildlife as marine animals. They tend to eat plastic, of course, by accident. They become entangled in floating plastic, and it is affecting the health and can, in the end, kill them, as you can see here on the picture. This is an example of, or it shows the evidence, actually, of plastic in the guts of animals in the Arctic. And this one was a fulmar. And the fulmar is a bird that is related to the albatross. And you can just see that it has a lot of plastic in its stomach. But anyways, there are like also more alarming consequences that could also harm us. Because here you can see this image shows plankton, and the light green dots in the stomach of this plankton is plastic. So it has probably eaten plastic or those pieces of microplastic by mistake, since it can't tell the difference between normal food and small pieces of microplastic. But that little plankton has eaten microplastic will have a huge effect on us humans, just because, well, you know, everything is connected. Microplastic is moving in the food chain, meaning that the small plankton that has originally eaten microplastic will get eaten, as you can see on the slide, by another animal, let's say a fish, and the fish gets eaten by a seal or a blue whale. So everything interconnects with each other, and nothing just stays within, let's say, the plankton. But in the end of the food chain, we know it's not on this slide, but the end of the food chain is always the human being. And humans also eat fish. I eat fish on a regular basis, and this is worrying me a lot. So just see, either the fish gets eaten by us or by humans, and it actually ends up on our table. So it's plastic for dinner. Wow. So in the end, we eat our own plastic that we throw away in the ocean, or that ended in the ocean because we didn't take good care of it. So it's our plastic, meaning also it's our responsibility to take care about it. And at this point, we should all ask ourselves, well, what can we do about plastic in the Arctic? It might seem far away, but it actually isn't. And we actually can do a lot. And it's really, really easy, I can tell you. I will now present you 5 ways how you can easily prevent plastic from entering our oceans. And that's not rocket science, what I'm going to tell you now. It's really easy, and you will just know when I show that to you. So did you actually know that approximately 500 billion plastic bags are used worldwide? I didn't know. And did you know that more than 1 million plastic bags is used every single minute? I didn't know that either. And then there's another one. A plastic bag has an average working life of 15 minutes. So that's not much. That would be a school break. If I remember my school time, that was a normal break. And then that's the working life of a plastic bag. So it's just so easy. Just bring your own bag when you go to the store. I always have this one with me. You can just see that here. I just always have it to put something in there if I go shopping or whatever, so that I don't need to use a plastic bag. And it actually helps to prevent millions of plastic bags that enter, or that even have the chance entering the ocean. So just think about if you and your friends would start doing that, and also your families. And I don't know how many people are listening right now, but even so, it's a start, and we should start from us. I mean, we should be the change that we also want to be. And that's just one. And the reusable bag. And then I have another one, the reusable to-go cup. It's always nice to have one, because you can just easily fill your tea or your coffee in here, and you don't need to use those to-go cups that they give you normally in the shop, and that I think they always look not so nice, but with those like reusable to-go cups, you can also design them yourselves or whatever, so you can make it look individual and really fancy. Then you also could use, I mean, this is not stuff that I just bought. I'm using it on a daily basis. You can just easily fill in your water here, and then you would prevent a lot of plastic bottles from entering the oceans. And then I have another one. Since you all go to school and you're actually also eating something, I suppose, you can just put your lunch in a reusable box, let's say out of metal or whatever, in order to prevent that so many small sandwich bags also end up in the ocean. And then my biggest wish actually for you guys is that you would stop using straws. But please don't panic. I mean, there are so many people that seem to love plastic straws, but saying no to plastic straws doesn't mean that you are not allowed to ever use a straw again. I mean, there are so many alternatives. You can use paper straws if we have them at home. Those are like, it's the same and they look even cool. And you can use bamboo straws, glass straws, stainless steel straws. So it's an endless list of alternatives for plastic straws. And for you, it might seem that plastic straws might be so trivial to start with. But what I'm going to tell you now is that the US alone, they are consuming 500 million straws every single day. And most of these straws actually end up in the world oceans. So they end up being mistaken for food by marine life, which is then swallowed. And as you have seen it, they can cause injuries or even the death of that animal. And straws, let's say coffee stirrers, cocktail straws, big bendy straws, they gradually break down into microplastic that also leach toxins into the water and eventually, after so many decades, will blanket our sea floor. So, to end this lecture, I found a really funny, at least I thought it was funny, a campaign from this year, from 2017, to go straw-free. And I don't know if you're using Instagram or whatever, but they're using the hashtag #StopSucking and hashtag Strawless Ocean. And this is a video clip of 1 minute, and I will just show it to you on YouTube. So here we go. So that's it. I really like this short video clip. That's why I also showed it to you, of course. But yeah, it's basically it's just telling the story that the changes in our daily life might seem small, but they will make a huge difference and they will have a huge impact on the health of our oceans and, of course, the wildlife all over the world, not just especially in the unique Arctic. And I think it's just important for you to know that everybody of you can make that change in their daily life. And sometimes it's just not a really big change. It's nothing that we lose. We just use other alternatives.